Well, it's great to be here with all of you from the Pacific Islands. I've worked with the PASU now for, I don't know, 7 or so years, and we've always been aware that the Pacific Islands were part of our region, and so it's great to do a project with you. I'm Vicki Leonard. I'm a nurse practitioner, doctorally prepared, and I've been working in the area of children's environmental health for about 15 years. And James went over what we do at the PASU. So I'm going to talk specifically about this toolkit that I was the main author of. And I worked in a small program that was funded by the Department of Education in California to do technical assistance for childcare on health and safety. And we had an advice line. Another nurse and I answered questions from providers and parents. And one of the sort of paradigm phone calls that I got that got me interested in all of this was a mother called and said, you know, my childcare provider cleans the changing pad with a 10% bleach solution, and then she lays my 2-month-old baby down on the wet pad. Is that okay? And that got me thinking. And it's sort of a long story, but the California Department of Pesticide Regulation had not really been looking at disinfectants as a pesticide that they really needed to educate people about. But I dogged them, and they funded me to create this toolkit, which the first version of which was published in 2013. And it was in use for up until the present. And last year, or the year before, with COVID and the incredible increase in the use of disinfectants to combat COVID, however misguided that was, prompted us to think about writing a second edition, which we did. So this new second edition of the toolkit has materials specific to COVID-19 and more in general, infectious diseases that are spread by aerosols. And also the science was updated to reflect current research around cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting products and practices. So this toolkit includes a 63-page curriculum booklet that really covers all of the aspects of these topics in depth. There's also a checklist that you can use to help develop and maintain a green cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting program in your childcare program. There are 3 posters. There are 12 standalone fact sheets for providers, and these have all been updated to address COVID-19. So they cover things like building ventilation and how do you label a cleaning product container, how do you read a disinfectant product label, what's the problem with bleach, things like that. And then there are 3 fact sheets for families. Choosing safer products for cleaning and sanitizing in your home, how to reduce the spread of infectious diseases at home, and safer disinfectant use during the COVID-19 pandemic. The entire toolkit is also now available in Spanish, and both of the toolkits are available to download here. And as James said, we'll share these slides with you, so you don't have to worry about writing down any of this information. It'll all be provided. So as I said, there's a curriculum document and then this checklist. These are the posters. We're going to talk about a couple of these in depth because that was what was requested. And we were told that you were interested in the following materials, which we have translated. I don't know, have we translated into all 3 now, James?
No, not yet. So we've got versions in Tagalog as well as Samoan, and I'll share out the links to those after this presentation. But unfortunately, we had to hang up with tomorrow, so we're still looking for any medical or other kind of professional translators. If anybody does have any leads, please let me know after the talk. can follow up with them.
Yeah, okay, so we will share the 2 languages that we have translated and along with the slides. So I thought I'd talk first about, why are we worried about cleaning and disinfecting products? And there's some pretty compelling science on this. People who do cleaning work for a living have the highest rates of work-related asthma. And anyone whose job involves exposure to cleaning products or disinfectants has an increased risk of asthma, especially those who are preparing disinfectants. And sounds like many of you are caregivers and are probably involved in mixing up disinfectants. And when I've done many presentations on this, and when I talk about asthma, many people look at the person sitting next to them and say, oh, maybe that's why I have asthma. Also, the research shows that people who clean their own homes have higher rates of lower respiratory symptoms if they use bleach or multiple kinds of sprays. Sprays are particularly problematic. And children whose homes have higher volatile organic compounds, which are things that are emitted in cleaning and sanitizing and disinfecting products, those kids are more likely to have asthma. There's also an increased risk of airway inflammation with increased spray use in the home, and children exposed to more cleaning products in infancy are more likely to wheeze when they're older. So these are all the results of scientific studies that have been done on this problem. So the first poster I'm going to review is the cycle of environmental pollution. And it's important to think about not just the immediate health risks of these products that we use, but also the whole cycle of their use and disposal and where they end up. So many of the chemicals that we use to clean and disinfect pollute the air that we breathe. It's important if you have to use bleach. I understand that bleach is pretty common in your part of the world. You should put it into a spray bottle and set the nozzle to stream, not spray. When you set it to spray, it aerosolizes the product, the bleach, or whatever you're using, and it means you inhale it, and you inhale it deeper into your lungs where it can cause problems. So you set it to stream, and then you apply it to a cleaning cloth and use that to clean the surface. So this reduces the aerosolized bleach in the air that you breathe. And I also want to just remind you, whatever disinfectant you're using, you must allow it to sit wet on the surface for the manufacturer's recommended contact time. And for bleach, depending on the product, this is 5 to 10 minutes. And you want to make sure that the bleach that you're using is a registered EPA disinfectant. There's a lot of bleach in retail stores that are they're not retail, they're not registered disinfectants. So when we use these chemicals, they go down the drain and into the sewer, and they either go into a septic system or they go into wastewater treatment plants. And either way, they can cause problems. Wastewater treatment plants treat wastewater, and they divide it into wastewater and sludge. The sludge is then offloaded onto often agricultural fields or other parks or other places where it fertilizes the soil. And the problem is that not all chemicals are removed in the wastewater treatment plant. So you end up either discharging them into surface waters along with the effluent, or they go on to these surfaces like agricultural fields. And in fact, when they looked at this, they did a study on triclosan, which is something that it's not as common in soap now as it was, but antibacterial soap, almost all of it contained that the antibacterial agent was triclosan. And triclosan or triclosan is concentrated actually in this sludge in the water treatment plant. So then they take it and they spread it on a field. And when they looked at, it was carrots and zucchini, they found that the carrots and the zucchini took up the triclosan in the field where they were grown. And of course, then we eat those products and get put into our bodies. And there's a very sad example of this in the state of Maine. Small farmers, many of them trying to become organic farmers, are discovering that their crops and their dairy milk are contaminated with a chemical called PFAS. And everybody's wondering, where did this come from? Well, PFAS chemicals are everywhere in our environment, and they're used in everyday household activities and also in industrial processes. And they end up in the biosolids from municipal sewage, as I was just describing. And the biosolids are spread on the fields and taken up by plants and then by animals, as well as into the drinking water of farmers. And many of these families in Maine are now struggling with what to do with their contaminated fields, their contaminated cows, etc. And then when we eat fish or shellfish that have concentrated chemicals in their tissue, the chemicals again get into our bodies, and they can cause health problems. And then they can return to our homes, schools, and workplaces in our tap water. So now I'm going to talk about how you can break the chain of infection in early care and education. There are lots of ways you can do this, and not all of them require the use of chemicals. Many of them don't. So infectious diseases are caused by germs. Bacteria and viruses are the germs that cause most illness in early care and education. And sometimes you hear germs referred to as microbes. And I just want to point out here that viruses are probably the most common infectious agent in early care and education. And sanitizers are registered for use in food contact surfaces, and they're registered to be active against bacteria, but not viruses. So when you're sanitizing things, you aren't necessarily killing viruses because they're not registered for that use. That's something many people don't know. So germs need a victim, like a person who's not immune to the germ. And they need a place to grow and multiply. And that place has to provide both food and moisture. One of the problems, you see these germs collecting on this sink. And when you provide an environment that's constantly wet and it's dirty, you can develop what's called biofilm on that surface. And that's bacteria that aggregate into a mass. And it's much harder to disinfect those bacteria when they formed a biofilm. Disinfectants are tested against bacteria that are not in biofilm. And the biofilm has sort of a hard to penetrate surface. So that's a reason you really want to keep surfaces, particularly in food preparation areas and food eating areas. You want to keep those surfaces dry and clean. Some other places that bacteria grow, if you've got a wound or your lungs, as we know from COVID, many people early on who got COVID, their lungs were pretty much destroyed by the virus growing in their lungs. So when COVID first started, there was an assumption that it was spread by droplets, which fall to surfaces quickly. And then if you put your hand on that surface and then stick your hand in your mouth, your nose, or your eyes, that was the way it was thought initially that COVID spread. And with some germs, that is the way they're spread. These surfaces are called fomites. And you touch the surface, you pick the germs up on your hand, you touch your hand to your mouth, your nose, or your eyes. And particularly the mucous membranes of those areas, the sort of wet skin in your inner eye, inside your nose, and inside your mouth. And if there are enough of the germs, you need a sufficient quantity of them, and you haven't been vaccinated or had a prior infection with those germs, then they'll multiply and can make you sick. You can slow the spread of these kinds of infectious diseases that spread via fomites by sanitizing and disinfecting. But now we know that actually COVID and many other viruses that historically were thought to be spread by droplets that fell to the ground are actually spread by aerosols. They're much smaller and they spread in the air sort of like smoke. And if someone is in a room that is sick with one of these diseases that is spread by aerosols, the aerosols will concentrate. And then they get into your body when you breathe them in the air. You can slow the spread of germs and aerosols by wearing masks, opening windows, and filtering the air. But disinfecting does not stop the spread of germs and aerosols. This is a really, really important point. If you know what the disease is that you're dealing with in your center, it really helps to know whether that disease is spread by surfaces or by aerosols. Because I used to talk to people all the time. They were so frustrated that everyone was sick and they were disinfecting like crazy every surface in their center. But the disease was spread in the air and they weren't addressing the things that you can do to reduce virus in the air. So it's very helpful, to distinguish how a disease is spread. So after germs grow, then they hitch a ride from the place where they grew, looking for another place to grow. So a toddler mouths a toy, toddler with a cold, and then another toddler comes along and sticks the toy in their mouth and gets the virus. Germs can fly out of your nose and mouth when you sneeze and cough, and even or especially when you talk or sing. Singing is a really great way to spread viruses. If you go to the bathroom and don't flush the toilet, you leave germs on the toilet lever, and then you take them with you into wherever you're going and spread them that way. So some of the ways we can break the chain of infection without using chemicals is sneezing in our sleep. And I was involved in, California has developed these preschool foundations, they're called. They're guidance for what children who have attended a quality preschool should both know and do after their 4-year-old year and their 3-year-old year ending at 4 and their 4-year-old year ending at 5. And I wrote the preschool foundations on health. And it was an exhaustive deep dive into what kids understand about health. And the thing that really became clear to me is that what you do in childcare is teach children habits. And if they don't learn those habits with you or with their parents at that age, they often don't develop them ever. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind when you're doing things like teaching them how to wash their hands or brush their teeth, that you are inculcating habits into these kids that will serve them for the rest of their lives. It's really important. Having hand washing visuals by the sink and really having it embedded in your program. And then if it's recommended by the CDC, wearing a mask is very effective. And even children as young as 2 can wear a mask. And I know because my granddaughter did it at her preschool. And when everyone wears a mask, the risk of transmitting a respiratory disease goes way down. We could have ended COVID if everyone had worn masks and socially distanced, but people didn't want to do that. So here we are. And then of course, cleaning and sanitizing and disinfecting when and where necessary. I hope you were all aware of the book or the online resource Caring for Our Children, which was developed by the American Public Health Association. And it has standards for every possible environmental or health and safety problem that you could imagine. It's available for free online. And I really, if you haven't used it, I really encourage you to look at that as a resource. You can download the whole thing as a PDF and search it that way. And it's so useful. But there's an appendix to Caring for Our Children that has suggested timetables for what you should disinfect and how often. And it's a good guidance if you don't have guidance from your local childcare licensing people. Opening windows or using properly working ventilation equipment to bring in fresh air, filter germs, and dilute the germs in the air are really important. And I don't know what the Pacific Islands are going to get in terms of funding from this latest bill, but any funding that you can put towards improving the ventilation and filtration in your program will be incredibly well used. There are many things that happen in indoor air in schools, not just COVID. There are pollutants that build up, there are PCBs, there are volatile organic compounds, and all of those things are reduced by both ventilation, where you bring in outside air and you filter air, and using in-room filters. These things can really improve the health of everyone. Microfiber is a great tool for removing germs from surfaces. In hospitals, they've found that using microfiber mops and a detergent can remove as many germs as a cotton rag and a disinfectant. If you use an all-purpose cleaner and microfiber and you scrub vigorously, you're going to go far towards removing all the germs from the surface. And good quality microfiber can be washed up to 300 to 500 times. It must be washed separately from other fibers, and you can't use fabric softener. And you can wash it in hot water. That's if you use it in places like bathrooms and kitchens, then it's important to wash it in hot water. And it can be air dried or dried on low in the dryer. But it's really a great resource. In many situations, you can use microfiber and water, for instance, cleaning windows. So I recommend that you try that out. So other ways that germs can spread, contaminated sponges and mops. So the old-fashioned cotton string mops are a hazard when they are used in a room. They go in the bucket, they get wrung out, and then they go into another room. And basically, when you do that, all you're doing is spreading germs from one site to another. It's also ergonomically for the people who do that kind of work. A microfiber mop is so much easier to use and less, harmful to your body when you do it all day long. So I really encourage you to look at using microfiber mops instead of cotton string mops. Let's see. So when someone doesn't wash their hands and they eat out of a common food bowl, then that's another way things can be spread. If they sneeze in the bowl. Also in the blood of someone who has a bloodborne infection. But kids are pretty good. That's another thing that is a habit. If you teach kids to just not touch something, if someone has a a wound and they bleed, you know, that's not something you touch. That's a habit that they need to learn. And then things can also spread in the air, as I've said now. If you use microfiber, use a color coding system to avoid moving germs from one surface to another. So, you know, have orange wipers for restrooms or feces cleaning, blue ones for the kitchen and food prep areas, and green for everything else. That way, you're never confused about what you might have used that for before. They can all be laundered in the same load with non-chlorine bleach, so like a hydrogen peroxide bleach in hot water, and dried in the dryer. This will kill whatever's in the wiper. And again, you can use the color-coded mops in the same way. And we have a whole fact sheet on microfiber. It's called What's So Great About Microfiber, if you want to read more about it. And then, of course, taking care of your immune system is really important. Sleep and exercise, healthy foods are all things that really affect our immune systems. There's growing recognition that all of the processed food that we're eating really has a bad effect on our bodies, increasing inflammation and decreasing the way our immune system cope with the world. Also getting vaccinated against infectious diseases. Really important to look at staff. You know, are all staff vaccinated? Is everyone vaccinated against pertussis? You know, your pertussis that we get vaccinated against as kids, your immunity wears off in 7 to 10 years. So everyone should be getting vaccinated against pertussis if they haven't recently. And when you get vaccinated, it's not just protecting you. If you don't get sick with something that you're vaccinated against, you won't expose other people who are vulnerable, especially infants, elderly people, and people with chronic illnesses who don't have well-functioning immune systems, and people who are being treated for cancer. There's nothing they can do about being exposed because of their situation. So the rest of us sort of have to take care of them. I think I've covered this now. Hand washing is really an important habit. According to the CDC, hand washing with plain soap and water is the most important thing you can do to reduce the spread of infectious disease that is not airborne. So diseases that are spread by surfaces in your ECE program and at home. And in my research on this, I found a paper where they looked at the germs, the microbes on all kinds of surfaces in early care and education programs. And the surface that had the most germs, caregivers' hands. So not just kids, but caregivers also have to wash their hands frequently. So it's, you know, great if you can create a policy in your program that states when and how to wash hands. And it's important to provide access to running water. My grandson last year was in first grade in a school that did not provide any running water outside where they could wash their hands. They just kept giving them hand sanitizer, layered upon layered. And their hands were filthy, and the hand sanitizer doesn't work when it's applied over dirt. So having running water is really important. Using foaming soap is great because you can actually pretty much wash your hands completely, you know, row your boat twice with foaming soap and just use water to rinse. This can help when you've got a group of kids. You don't have, you know, everyone can be washing their hands with foaming soap, and then you just go to the water and rinse it off. You need to rub your hands for at least 20 seconds, and kids need to be taught that. And then you take a paper towel and you dry your hands from the fingertips to the wrist with a clean paper towel. This will remove more germs. So it's not just drying your hands, but it's also additional germ removal. And then You should turn off the faucet and open the door. This is more for adults because kids typically don't have doors on their the areas where they wash their hands. But if you open the door using the same paper towel that you dried your hands with, then you won't expose yourself to the germs put on the door handle by the people who don't wash their hands. And the studies on that are kind of horrifying. So protect yourself by opening the door with the paper towel. So if soap and running water are not available, you can use, kids over 24 months and adults can use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. And you should make sure that the sanitizer contains at least 60% alcohol, or it's not going to do the job. And you have to remember that they don't eliminate all the germs, especially, as I said, when hands are dirty. And the other thing that a lot of people don't understand is that alcohol-based sanitizer is flammable. So you need to store, if you've got a big gallon thing of hand sanitizer, you need to store that as a flammable material. And of course, you need to keep it out of the reach of children. During COVID, they had, in 2020, they had almost 10,000 hand sanitizer exposure cases in children under the age of 12. And they say even a small amount of alcohol can cause alcohol poisoning in children, so you need to keep it out of their reach. So these are some of the habits: washing your hands, sneezing or coughing, avoiding sneezing or coughing into your hands, coughing into your sleeve. Germs don't live as long on textiles as they do on hard surfaces or your hands. And then, wearing masks during periods of wide community spread of serious infectious disease. There's a nice article in 0 to 3, which is a wonderful resource for people who care for young children, called Mask Up, Talking to Young Children About Wearing Masks. And the link is here, so when you get the slides, you can click on the link if that's something you're interested in. And also, there are not American-made masks that fit small children, but the Korean alternatives to KN95 masks, they're called KF94s, are readily available in children's sizes, and they're proven to be effective against viruses. I know this personally because both of my grandchildren have been wearing masks now for 2 years from Korea, and the younger one started when she was 2, and the older one started when he was 5. The masks from Korea are comfortable to wear, and they're not hard to breathe through. So it's something to look into if you're interested, and I can provide resources if people are interested in that. For children 7 and up, a small like a 3M N95 mask may fit. And on our website, we have information on how to fit test a mask to anyone, a child or an adult. And that's an important thing to do. The problem with the surgical masks is that they have such large gaps on the sides that they're not very effective. So when you clean surfaces in the States, we can get products that are certified by third-party agencies. And I don't know how available these are where you are, but the safer choice is the EPA certification, and that's probably the most likely one that you would find in your area. And there are many cleaners and cleaners that are certified by Safer Choice that you can find in the grocery store. These apply only to cleaning products, not to disinfectants. Nobody can legally certify a disinfectant as safer for human health and the environment except the EPA Safer Choice, the Sign for the Environment program. So at home, it's important to have a whole system for washing your hands. And this is actually important even in a non-COVID situation, even just everyday life. When you come home from outside, before you eat, after you use the bathroom, after you clean, after you touch animals, including pets or pet toys, food, leashes, or waste, before and after you take care of a sick person, and after you handle body fluids, blow your nose or sneeze or cough into your hands, or you help a child to do this, or help after helping a child with a runny nose, which I know happens all day long. So, and you should increase your use of hand washing if there's an infectious disease going through your community. Again, clean frequently touched surfaces with a microfiber cloth and a Safer Choice certified all-purpose cleaner. Rubbing vigorously really helps with microfiber. It really removes stuff. And then there are safer disinfectants, much safer than bleach, and they're certified as safer by the EPA's Design for the Environment list of safe, Design for the Environment. And they have a list of safer disinfectants. This is the link. So when you get these slides, you can click on the link and look at the disinfectants that are safer for both human health and the environment. And again, you want to really focus on surfaces only if the disease is spread by touching surfaces. If it's in the air, it's not going to help to disinfect like crazy and expose everyone to the chemical health effects of disinfectants. And I also should mention that demographically, childcare providers are more than half of childcare providers are women of childbearing age. So you have to also think about the effects of these things on the fetus of women who are working in your programs, who are pregnant. So the active ingredients that are found in the disinfectants that are approved by DFE are not linked to asthma, cancer, endocrine disruption, DNA damage, or skin irritation. These are all health effects that are associated with many disinfectants. And it's a reason why choosing safer ones is really important when you're working, especially with young children. You also need to store, dilute, and use disinfectants in a responsible manner according to the label. Always, always read the label. Dilute it according to the label, and use any personal protective equipment. If it says to wear a mask, wear a mask. Because over time, if you do this over and over, you're going to develop health effects. So you don't want to do that. Never mix bleach or other cleaning and disinfecting products together because you can develop fumes that are extremely toxic. And one thing that I really recommend people do is if you are going to use bleach, or even if you're going to use other kinds of disinfectants, if you purchase them from a distributor, like a school does, they will often provide a dilution station. And this is apparatus that you put the disinfectant into, and it will put the exact amount of disinfectant into the secondary container that is what is recommended, without you leaning over the gallon of bleach and breathing in the fumes as you measure out your 2 tablespoons or whatever it is. So I really recommend people look into a dilution station. Of course, keeping them out of the reach of children. And then disinfectants should never be applied to items used by children, especially things that they might put in their mouths. Use a food contact sanitizer for that. So I'm just going to talk a little bit, because I've emphasized the aerosol problem, about how we get sick from aerosols. As I said, when you talk or sing or shout, you exhale aerosol particles, and they move into the room like smoke, and they can accumulate in the room like smoke, and you can breathe them in if you're in the room. Without ventilation, they remain suspended in the air, and they become increasingly dense as time passes. So, initially they said, it's air, COVID is in droplets. They go 6 feet and they drop to the ground. And so you don't have to worry if you're more than 6 feet away. And now we know that is not true. Those viruses will spread throughout a room, just like smoke does. Speaking in a loud voice will release 50 times more virus-laden particles than when we don't speak at all. And if they're not diluted through ventilation, or if they're not filtered out of the air, they become increasingly concentrated, which increases the risk of infection. So there's a group of aerosol scientists who've been really trying to get everyone to see how you deal with aerosols, and it's been a struggle. But they have this, what they call the layered risk reduction approach to COVID-19. So you want to reduce the source. So, you know, if someone's sick, don't come to school. If you require masks, if everyone's wearing an N95 mask, the virus transmission is like 97% prevented. You want to be distant from the source, although if there's enough virus built up in the room, it doesn't matter where you are in the room, you'll still be exposed. And then ventilating and filtering the air. Disinfecting should be low on the list, and educating people about how these viruses spread is really important. So this is sort of the takeaway from tonight. Diseases that are airborne are best addressed using increased ventilation, air filtration, masks, and social distancing, not disinfecting. This is not an old concept. This is a great image. These were kids who were, the teachers were trying to prevent the spread of tuberculosis, and they had these outdoor classrooms, and they said that none of these kids got TB. They had classes outside. They opened all the windows. It was freezing cold, and they had these Eskimo blankets, they called them. So we've known about this for a long time, and we just need to remember what we once knew. This is an image that shows the relative sizes of droplets and aerosols and how far they spread. So the blue circles are the droplets, which initially we said was how things, how COVID was spread. And you can see, you know, in this image, they drop to the ground pretty quickly. But since we also know that it also spread through small and large aerosols, they go out throughout the room. Ventilation and filtration can reduce aerosols and infections. Yeah. If everyone masks, you have better ventilation and filtration and social distancing. You have hospital grade protections from the spread of infectious disease. Your mask needs to go over the bridge of your nose, down around your chin, and be flush against your cheeks. That's why the surgical masks are such a problem, because they're not flush against your cheeks and they allow air to come in from the sides and those big gaps. Cotton masks also are not effective against these viruses. I just want to mention, these are a really cheap, inexpensive air filter that you can make in about 45 minutes. I made 2 of them for my grandson's school. They're made from a MERV 13 furnace filter and a 20-inch box fan. They're great because they filter a lot of air for the cost, and they send the air straight up in the room, not across the room, which is good, because if someone's infected and you send air across the room and it goes by the infected person and travels on to an uninfected infected person, that uninfected person can get sick. So having the air go straight up in the air is a great plus. You can make these for less than $100, and they filter a very large amount of air. So you can, this is a whole slide on ventilation, filtration. You can use portable air cleaners, but they're expensive, and the ones you buy that are manufactured often don't filter enough air or as much air as one of these Corsi Rosenthal boxes, and they can't equal 5 to 6 air changes per hour, which is what they're saying now is important to have in schoolrooms. And there's a calculator for schools here, a link to it. You can put in the dimensions of your rooms and it'll tell you what how much filtration you need and how big the air cleaner has to be. You also want to make very sure that the air cleaner, if you get an air cleaner, that it's on the California Air Resources Board list of approved air cleaners that do not produce ozone, and they meet the electrical safety standards of the CARB. Many of the air filters out there do produce ozone, which is a known carcinogen, and you really don't want to be emitting that in your classrooms. You also want a mechanical air cleaner with a true HEPA filter. We know these are effective. The research has been around for a long time. The manufacturers are bombarding schools and childcares with their products with all of these electronic add-ons. They say, you know, UV ozone ionizers, and makes it sound like they're even more effective, when in fact, they're not more effective, and they create downstream chemical byproducts that are very unhealthy. Many of them, we haven't studied them well. And these byproducts react with other indoor chemistry, and they're just, we don't want to go there. So just make sure that there's no technology in your air cleaner that is electronic. It's just mechanical. It's a HEPA filter and a fan. So here's a link to how you can make one. If you use a portable air cleaner, you want to put it near the center of the room and allow for circulation around the entire unit. Placing it off the floor is best, on a low table or desk. Try not to put it in a corner, and make sure that the cord is taped down, or you know, it's not a tripping hazard. And I just want to say that it's not just COVID that's important. I think maybe I've already said this, but I just feel so strongly about this, that the improving ventilation in schools has been shown to improve student performance. And they improved math and language performance, had higher test scores, their respiratory health improved. Student absences go down when you improve the ventilation. And in a Harvard study on the effects of a well-ventilated office space on your ability to think and react to a crisis, volunteers who worked in a well-ventilated office scored 61% higher than when they worked in typical office building conditions. And when they worked in the cleanest conditions, where you really had optimum ventilation and filtration with even lower CO2 levels and higher ventilation rates, their scores climbed 101%. So it's all of our health that's you know, being addressed by increasing ventilation. All right, I'm not gonna go through these. So I put a lot of resources here at the end, how you make one of these. There's a great video on using these air filters for ventilating classrooms. People who have guidance on healthy cleaning products. If you're going to use bleach, this is a great instructions, set of instructions on disinfecting with bleach. The San Francisco Department of the Environment has some wonderful videos on green cleaning. And also last time people asked about training on using disinfectants in childcare. And the California Department of Pesticide Regulation, their IPM for childcare centers has created a series of videos. So it's there are 3 of them on cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting. They're short. And there are also others on other kinds of pesticide use. And so that's a good resource. Eco-Healthy Childcare is a national certification program. It's a program of the Children's Environmental Health Network. And they certify programs that are eco-healthy. You have to meet certain criteria in order to get a certification. And they have this environmental health e-course. It costs money. It's $30 for the 3-hour session, but it's a great resource if you're interested in environmental health and childcare and what to do about it. So the toolkit is available online, and that's pretty much it. If you have questions that we don't answer today, you can always email us at our PACU email address. And there are lots of great resources on all kinds of children's environmental health topics on our website.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Vicki. Yeah, as mentioned, we do definitely want to leave some time for questions from you all. The very first question is, what questions do you have for us? I can just take a couple moments in case anybody has anything that pops up, and then I've got some more specific questions for you all. And I'll also stop recording actually at this point too, in case that makes anybody shy.